Hello, everyone, and welcome to Heart Healing Conversations, where we pull back the curtain on what weighs us down and explore the tools that lift us up every week. From vulnerable stories to practical wisdom, we're diving deep into what it means to live wholeheartedly. And with that, let's start our conversation today. Hi, Janna.
Hey Don, how are you this week?
I'm good. I was thinking about, when we were talking about what we should talk about today, I was thinking about how grief often brings up conflict,
Oh,
especially in families and between friends. I mean, I know a lot of people, and I can relate to this in my own life, when there's a death in the family. This is a time where families need that sense of connection and community, but so often it drives a wedge between family members and they never talk again. So I think this is important to talk about. And it doesn't just happen with death, it happens when any situation occurs in our life that is stressful and leads to, those unexpected feelings of grief and loss.
oh, I absolutely agree. I mean, this is a good one, especially around this year, I should say, I've heard from so many people that are struggling with this exact thing where conflict arises and it just shuts off communications, and then people don't understand why or what they said, what they did, and nobody will come and talk about it anymore to try and even resolve it. They just completely drop all communication and all, well, you're not my family anymore. I've even got some family myself that throws that one out. Well, we're not family anymore. Well, if only it were that simple, right? um, I Grief definitely has a way, like you said, of throwing a wedge in, especially in death, especially when there's money associated with it, or like a will, something like that, or a lack of a will too. I've also seen where people start just fighting and fighting back and forth over who gets what and how we're going to pay these bills, and it gets too stressful looking at all of the little things, trying to take care of necessities, where I do believe we should just be kind of leaning on each other and talking about kind of the big picture of, hey, we just lost a family member.
Mhm. Yeah, it's very sad. I mean, I lost a family member years ago, and it was an unexpected death. And then my family member's wife refused to talk to me ever again. And to this day, I can't understand it because, I showed up, I was there to help with all the arrangements. I was trying to be supportive. And, this individual was so angry. And at that point, I hadn't done all the work on my own grief and didn't have the tools that I have today. And now, as I look back, I can see that this individual was hurting deeply.
Mm.
And I think oftentimes when we're hurting, we react and sometimes attack the people that are closest to us or the closest to the loved one that passed away.
Absolutely. Um, Sometimes I don't even know if it's necessarily reacting. I know just in my personal experiences, sometimes I just closed myself off so deeply that I couldn't allow any other kind of thoughts or anything to filter into my brain because I was so overwhelmed that it felt like anything that was coming in was negative criticism or just nastiness, and I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to deal with it. um, it seems like oftentimes even those that are trying to help by throwing comments at us, we talked about these kind of comments like, oh, you can find another boyfriend, or you can always get another dog, that kind of thing. Even though they're meant to be helpful, they just make us shut down because we do just want to feel heard and seen. And especially in like a death, losing a family member, you know, that's kind of why we all come together in those circumstances, is to share our experiences and the good times that we had together. So sharing our good stories of, oh, they were a great grandfather, and I remember them taking the kids out fishing, or just whatever good stories it was. versus everybody coming together and just focusing solely on how we have to disperse all of their belongings and then walk away again.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that most of us just don't have the tools. We haven't been taught them how we navigate these times. I mean, I think some of the most helpful things that we can do is to just pause because it's really easy to react. And, you know, many people say those things, like you said, well, you can get another dog or, they're in a better place now. And while there's truth in that, sometimes that's an intellectual statement. And that doesn't address our heart, which is the thing that's hurting. I mean, we can think our thoughts, we can intellectually think through situations, but that doesn't take care of the heart. And I think that's where the conflict lies is that, many times we say to ourselves, oh, well, I should be getting through this. I should be feeling better. I should understand that there's a lot of great things in my life, but our heart is hurting.
Mm-hmm.
And so we react to situations and people because we don't know what else to do. But if we choose to just pause, put ourselves in a different room, choose to leave the situation for a while and honor our own needs, because, especially in the situation of a death, there's so much to be taken care of that our needs get forgotten. We
Oh,
forget to eat, we can't sleep because we don't have time, and we're also just emotionally devastated that, it's really difficult to sleep. Some people can, others can't. But all of these things that we would normally do, maybe exercise, maybe, meditate, those tend to go out the window when there's a crisis going on. And so, without being able to nurture ourselves, we can't show up as the human that we're used to showing up as. And we're understandably can be very irritable. And it's difficult to deal with situations when people are bombarding us with unhelpful comments, unhelpful advice, when we're already grieving inside.
yeah. And I think that list you just went through of ways that we won't take care of ourselves is kind of a good reminder to think about in terms of, a loss where you're showing up for, say, mom after dad died, even being there just to offer and do reminders for those people of, hey, did you have lunch? Let's go to lunch, or let me make you lunch. Hey, have you gone for a walk? Let's go out and get some fresh air. Just some of those little things can be so much more helpful to a griever, especially than trying to intellectualize, like you said, telling me, oh, it's okay, they're in a better place. I think we try to overlook it and we try to fix things for people when truly, like you said, what we just need to do is be present and offer to help them. What can I do to support you? How can I help you?
I agree. And sometimes I think we just need to be silent
Mm-hmm.
and just listen, because I know some of us get very overwhelmed when we're bombarded with, well, let me take you to do this. What can I do now? Like sometimes we just want silence. And so just to be present with someone and allow them to start being emotionally honest when they're ready and ask for what they need, but being there so that they feel supported. Because I think conflict often comes because we just don't know how to ask for what we need. And so we get up to here and there's just too much stimulation,
Mm-hmm.
too many people asking us questions, telling us, life will get better, telling us, to be strong. We get to a breaking point. We just can't do it anymore. And then it's like we distance ourselves from every single person and even those that are most supportive in our lives.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have also had some others too that also get to a point where they're afraid to sit in the silence too because their brain gets way too overactive and all the should haves, would haves, how could I have done this differently? And that noise gets too loud and they can't deal with that noise either.
Mhm.
Again, learning a lot of these tools to help manage that has been life-changing for myself in those situations, and I know can be so helpful to so many more. Um, Again, with sitting in the silence too, just allowing them to actually openly cry
Hmm.
while sitting there not saying anything. I At first it definitely feels awkward, but once you get used to it, I guess, or once you open up and allow it to happen, it does. It has a way of kind of feeling like you're lifting a heavy load off of yourself without even saying anything.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up because then it brings to mind, we're taught to, I think as kids, we're always handing people Kleenexes when they're crying because we want them to feel better and we want them to be able to dry their tears.
Yep.
But what that does is it causes them to stop crying, most people, because they think, oh, maybe I shouldn't be doing this. Maybe the other person's uncomfortable. And so it's really important to just allow people to cry without offering them tissues so that they can have that emotional release and allow them to ask, can you get me a tissue?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was a really hard one for me to learn because, like you said, it's pretty ingrained in us early on, and you don't recognize it as a symbol of stop the emotion. I'm just
Right.
trying to help, but it truly does kind of make you feel awkward and stop. I think it also has a way of stopping your train of thought of what it was that you were getting emotional about too, because it puts
Correct.
your brain elsewhere where it's, oh, okay, now I got to focus over here. And when you get into those emotional spaces and times where you do need that release of crying, it's good to follow through with it and let it come out wholeheartedly.
Yeah, it is. And just to allow other people to do the same thing. I mean, I remember when my husband and I were together years ago, like I'd be crying and finally I'd be like, "Can you just give me a Kleenex?" Because we both practice this same model of not
Yep.
giving each other Kleenexes. But at some point, it's like, okay, I got snot all over my shirt. I like it's dripping out of my nose. Just give me a Kleenex. So, I mean, it's important to have people in our lives that, we're so connected to that they kind of know us in a really deep level that we have that communication. We have that ability to say, hey, I know you're trying to allow me to have these tears, but hey, now can you go give me that Kleenex?
Right. Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, I think that's really important. So, I just find it so sad as we started out this conversation, the conflict that occurs whenever there's things that happen in our lives that are painful. And we've mainly talked about death, but if you think about like natural disasters,
Ooh.
divorce, that kind of thing. I mean, I remember when I was going through my divorce at the age of 30, there were times where I just didn't want to deal with people, and I did snap because I was navigating one of the most painful experiences of my life, and I didn't have the tools, and I didn't want to hear what people had to say because, you know, there would be comments like, well, you deserve better. Well, there's more fish in the sea. Like, I hate that. I understand that there's a dating app, but that's named after it. But,
Right. Right.
when your heart's hurting, most of us are not thinking about what comes next. And if we are, and we're trying to replace something that we've lost, that doesn't go well because we end up taking all the pain that we experienced in this current loss into our future, which is not what we want to do.
Yeah. Like you said, I like that you brought up natural disasters, even. Like, so many people can struggle, flooding or earthquakes, any of that stuff. We've seen a lot of it, even the wildfires and stuff that have been happening already this spring. Um,
Mhm.
the best thing we can do is find ways to help support. show up with a basket of goodies and drop it off on a doorstep or something just simple like that, showing that you care, even if
Mhm.
they're not ready to talk. Eventually, they'll understand by seeing those small gestures that you value them and want to be there for them, and they'll open up when they're ready.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's important to help people understand that they aren't alone. Um, because when these kind of things happen, anything that's heartbreaking that happens in our lives, many of us do feel isolated. Some of the isolation may be because we don't want to be around people, but the other part is that people move on with their lives.
Mm-hmm.
It's like if someone dies in the family after the funeral and after the celebration of life, you might have people deliver food for a week or so, but then everybody moves on and they forget. But we don't forget because we're the one going through it.
That's also another great reminder of following up with people later on and asking how they're doing still. Be that one that kind of puts in that reminder, especially if you remember some of the important days like grandpa's birthday or, hey, thinking about you today because I know today's a special day.
Mhm. Yeah, that's really important. To just, you know, spread that message that you're not alone. And I understand that you might still be struggling. And if you are, reach out to me because I am here. I'm not going anywhere.
Yes.
I know, so I've talked to so many people who were like, yeah, everybody did just go on with their life. And I felt very alone. And when I would reach out, sometimes I would get the question, well, aren't you over that yet?
Mm. Yeah. We talked a couple weeks ago about suicide things with one of my friends that had committed suicide, and again, a joint friend between us. Um, if you talk to her today, she can remember exactly how many days it's been since it happened. And to me, that was a huge eye opener of, I count it differently. Like, oh yeah, I know it's been so and so months, and yeah, I miss her, and it feels like it's only been yesterday. But somebody else is looking at that literally at a day at a time that she has now had to live without that person in their life. And it was just very eye opening to see those differences and how it can affect day to day life. That's just a good reminder for all of us, really, of some people are literally just making it minute to minute just to try
Mhm.
and keep moving forward.
Yeah, I think it's really important to realize, like you and I talk about, we have unique relationships with people, but how we grieve is also unique.
Mm-hmm.
Just because, you're sad and one day and angry the next doesn't mean the other person is. They may feel numb. It's just all how we um, navigate these losses. And so to be compassionate and to understand that we don't understand what someone else is going through, but we can support them, we can help them feel less alone, and we can normalize what they're going through versus judging it because
Yes,
it's not how we would grieve or how we think they should grieve.
absolutely.
So, you know, I I guess I'd like to just leave our listeners with maybe a couple helpful tips for when they're experiencing some type of a loss or a transition in their life and conflict, arises. Like, what are some helpful tips we can give them to get through it?
I guess one of my first is as as hard as it is to not close yourself off to the outside world and try to deal with it alone, it's okay to reach out for help.
Mhm. Yeah, I would agree with that. Um, I think often there's shame in reaching out for help, thinking something's wrong with me. I read and I hear often people say, well, I was broken or I am broken. And I want to get the message out that you're not broken if you're grieving. Actually, grieving is a normal experience that all of us go through in life. and asking for help is okay. It's kind of like, are you going to try and take care of your broken leg without medical attention? Like you need a professional. But for some reason, there's so much stigma that goes with mental health care.
Yeah, unfortunately, too much in today's society, especially with technology, what we have. You know, use a Google search engine to find grief help in your local area, or
Mhm.
even reach out to either one of us. We are more than willing to have conversations with you and help you on any level.
Yeah, what we don't want is for anybody to feel alone and isolated because that's where we start using unhealthy coping mechanisms. That's where addictions come out. And, we keep ourselves numb so that we don't have to heal, so that we don't have to feel. And then our lives take a dive down in the wrong direction. So,
And I think that makes another good topic to discuss there to kind of help a griever there is try to stay on the healthier side of the coping mechanisms, and again reach out for help if something's coming up and you're feeling like numbing the pain is the only answer.
right. Yeah. So starting first by being emotionally honest with yourself and then with someone you trust and asking for the help that you need. Because the truth is, we all need help at some point in our lives. We all need that support. It's not that we're broken, like I said, it's that we deserve support. We deserve community around us because when we're connected through community and healthy relationships, that's when we thrive.
Absolutely.
So, with that, I hope that all of you out there listening picked up something that really resonated or felt supportive. So, we want you to know that we will be back next week with another conversation. But if you have any desire to reach out to us, our information is in the show notes below. So, take care, friends.
Thank you guys.